Say we're joined here in studio by Labour's candidate Michael D. Higgins. You're welcome to the programme.
Thank you,
Mr. Higgins. In the past, we've had presidents who came to the office after long and distinguished careers, and in a sense concluded their careers in the presidency. Now that changed in more recent years. Would your presidency be a return to that kind of traditional presidency?
Well, there were many very fine presidents in that period, but of course I decided to leave the Dáil over a year ago. I didn't contest the last general election because it was clearly my intention to seek the nomination of the Labour Party, which of course I got last June. And now that the Labour Party has, as it were, put me into the field, I have the support of many others outside of the Labour Party as well. But I think that the kind of presidency that this is what's posed by your question is very much defined by the characteristics of the person themselves, their background. I have a background as a public representative, obviously, for over 25 years, but also as a human rights worker, as an academic, as a writer. And I'm really looking forward to it because when I decided to seek the nomination, I thought about, I'll put it plainly, it is my love of Ireland and my anxiety to give public service.
But you're somebody who, for all his career, has been immersed in party politics. For the most part with the Labour Party, although I think you were briefly in Fianna Fáil as well, in a way that Mary McAleese and Mary Robinson weren't.
Well, you see, Mary Robinson was, of course, a member of the Labour Party. It wasn't just being immersed in party politics. I've always been agitating for change. I think, I suppose, the period that's when you would have Mary Robinson and I very working closely together would be on women's rights in the 1970s and 80s. I've also campaigned outside of party politics altogether. Remember, for example, I was probably the first person in the elected assemblies to speak against the war in Iraq. I've also, as well as that, nothing to do with party politics, worked on human rights issues abroad, from Salvador across to Africa. And then again, in relation to it, when I was given the MacBride Peace Prize in '91, it was at the end of a long period in human rights work, and so that's important. That I'm not simply, you see, when you're president, you are not a member of any political party, and I will not be a member of any political party if I'm elected president.
But you're also presumably, and I think all the candidates would say this, your desire would be to be a unifying figure, and yet you're someone who's very well known for often controversial political views. I think in your own website you say that you campaigned on many of the key issues of the last 20 years and often argued for reforms in the face of the conservative consensus of the time. Now, for people who still have conservative traditional values, would you really be a president for them?
Well, of course, I respect them, and they have come to respect me, and they have voted for me in great numbers. You wouldn't be elected consistently for 25 years if some of them hadn't changed. But I think you raise a point, and that's very important. I've always been the person who's been on the cusp of change. And when you say, for example, that what I've written as well, that I have opposed conservatism where it has stopped us achieving the best of ourselves. And I really feel that's very important now. I think that you must ask the candidates, I mean, what voters will assess is where they're coming from, where they've been particularly for the last 15 years. I've been one of those who questioned, if you like, the Celtic Tiger and its assumptions. And I'm explicitly stating this time that I'm saying there will be, I am not in favour of a revival of the values, the attitudes, the behaviour that characterised that period, but we need to look at values if we are to get to a different version of the economy, one that is inclusive at home and which will restore and enhance our reputation abroad. As
has been pointed out, you're the oldest candidate in the field, and I don't want to harp on the age issue, but asking you not so much if you were elected president in the next year or two, but for the full 7-year term, would you have the energy to be able to carry through at a level of activity that presumably you'd hope to do for the full 7 years?
Oh, I have no difficulty in answering that, absolutely. I've always operated with extraordinary energy. I've never been simply a TD. Remember, I've done my travels abroad, for example, on the human rights missions, often involved going to some of the most remote and testing places. As now, for the next 7 years, I can absolutely assure you I'll only be doing one term, and in that 7 years, I will be, as the oath says, a gen of Malani Hiller, son lasses phone of Muintan Aheran. So I will be giving it. I really intend, for example, it's my intention right from the very beginning to visit communities where the real change is taking place, and to also, as well as that, being deep in our relationship with the Irish abroad and create a partnership with them for our future.
A final question, if I might briefly. Who would get the first invitation other than your family to visit the Áras?
Well, I've thought about that, and I think that I would probably, if I was successful, invite the other 6 candidates to come along and give me some advice on what they felt were the best moments of their own campaign, and particularly their interactions with communities where the real change is taking place. And I would really then ask them as well to make a choice for me or recommendations for the representatives of the Irish abroad.
Michael B. Higgins there, we'll leave it. Thanks indeed for talking to us.
Bia Saram Lartla.